We're glad you've chosen to listen to our weekly Talkback. The weekly Talkback is designed to take a portion of the teaching from this week to a deeper level. You may want to listen to this week's teaching, but it isn't necessary to understand the weekly Talkback. If you'd like to connect further, feel free to reach out to us through our website, kenoychurch.org. For now, enjoy the weekly Talkback from Kenoy Church, where our mission is to lead people into a growing relationship with Jesus Christ.
We talked a bit about how important it is for us to walk in someone else's shoes. We talked about it in the sermon from the perspective of what it must have been like to be a first century Jew who is following all the rules and regulations that Jews have to follow, and then suddenly to watch your family members and your friends convert to this new thing called Christianity, which essentially was following a guy, a rabbi whose name was Jesus, who claimed to be the Messiah, who died. He was tried as a criminal. He was executed as a criminal. And then his followers claims that he returned from the dead. And then these people are essentially worshiping him. They're leaving Judaism to follow him. And by putting ourselves in the shoes of the first century Jewish man or woman, we can understand why they'd be so upset about this new Christianity thing. We could understand why in the city of Smyrna, the Jews are turning the Christians into the Romans so they get in trouble, because they'd feel betrayed by their friends and family who are converting and leaving Judaism. They would feel like this idea of Christianity is some sort of a blasphemous offshoot of the true religion, the true way to follow who God is. And so by understanding their perspective, I think it gives us some grace and love in our understanding of who they are and what they're doing. And the reason I feel like it's so important for us to talk about that in the sermon today is because there is, a lot of history of anti-Semitic action and voices since biblical times, because of the fact that Jews crucified Jesus. That's what we've been told for a long time. And so even regimes like Hitler, well, they started with the fact that the Jews killed Jesus as one of the ways to begin to get people to come around and come against the Jews. And this sort of thinking is really problematic for us. To lump an entire people group in to any one way of thinking is kind of silliness. And the problem, though, is that we do this all the time today, here and now. And so when we talk today about understanding where the Jews are coming from, it's just as important for us to try and walk in the shoes of the people around us. There are going to be people in our church, at our church, around our church, people you're connected to and associated with, people at work that do things and act in a way and talk in a way that you don't like. And the easiest thing for you to do is to write them off, or to make assumptions about them, about why they do it, or why they talk like that, or why they act like that, or why do they have attitude like that. The easiest thing for you to do is even going to be to talk about them, not just write them off, but tell other people to write them off too. And when other people aren't sure, well, then you've done all the thinking already. You can provide all the reasons why you should write them off. We do this every day, folks, and it's time that we as a church and as a group of Christians choose a different way. When we meet people that we don't agree with and we don't like, when we have a hard time getting along with people, when we are annoyed by people, it's not a polarized action that we have to take. It's not one way or the other. It's not yes or no. It's not be best friends or write them off. There's a lot of other ways we can go about this. And one of the ways, a third way, Anabaptists especially have an understanding of a third way options, is to simply walk in their shoes, is to try and say, okay, so they're doing this thing I don't like. They're talking in a way that I don't appreciate. They have this attitude. Well, why? And maybe if you do that sort of thinking, you'll come to understand that they're not that bad, or at least you'll have more patience for them. Something that my mom told me when I was growing up, and it's been something that I've remembered for a long time, is when you struggle to like someone, pray for them. It's really hard to hate someone that you're praying for. And yeah, hate might be a strong word. But sometimes the way that we act and the way that we talk to people, it sure sounds a lot like hate. And that's painful. Jesus clearly talks about how we cannot love him and hate our brother. And yet, the church is almost the place that we find this on a regular basis. Almost always. If we can't get along inside the church, how do we expect anybody else to join us? How do we expect anybody else to show up on a Sunday or a Wednesday or at some church picnic and see the way we treat one another and go, oh yeah, I want to be a part of that? How do you expect to invite your neighbor or your friend or your coworker if all they ever see or hear about from you is you talking poorly about the people around you or the people at your church? It doesn't make anybody want to join or come or be a part of. One of the things that set the early Christian church apart, one of the reasons that we have early historians that are not Christian, they would be philosophers and poets, but they write about the fact that these early Christians love one another in a way that makes them want to believe. Do you understand how amazing that is? The early Christians, the early church, a gathering of people, a congregation of people love each other so well, so much, so deeply, so obviously, that the people who don't believe the same stuff, the people who don't have a relationship with Jesus, those people watch, they see it, and they want to believe. Boy, it's hard for me to suggest that we have a higher calling than that one. To be the kind of community that so resembles the love that Jesus had for this world that people can't help but fall in love with Jesus. You and I, we're not the main character in the story. We aren't the hero. Jesus Christ is the main character and the hero. You and I get to play a side role. We're more of a John the Baptist kind of character. Our role is to point towards someone else. John the Baptist's entire ministry was all about calling people to know God and to let them know that someone else, a Messiah, was coming. And when the Messiah showed up, John didn't get envious of who the Messiah was. John didn't vie for the attention of the crowd. John simply pointed and said, here he is. The one I've been telling you about. Here he is. As a community, that's our job. We point the way to Jesus. The way we live, the way we love, the way we care, the way we support, the way that we even hold one another accountable in love shows the world who Jesus is. It points the way to Jesus. So guys, as we think about the sermon today, as we dig deeper into what we're talking about, we need to really think through how we can be better at pointing the way to Jesus. And it's not because we're doing a terrible job. Please hear me say that. It's because we always need to be looking at ourselves and saying, okay, how can I grow? How can I be more Christ-like? How can I resemble Jesus more? How can I love people better? Because God is satisfied with who we are. He loves who he made us to be. But you and I should never be satisfied with how much we love Jesus. We should always be digging deeper into loving him. Always be digging deeper into how we know him. Always be digging deeper into how we represent him. Because that's our job. We are the representation of Jesus on this earth. It's a high calling, but it's our calling. And it's our calling together. We're in this together. You're not alone in this. This is something that we can do together.
Hi, this is Pastor Nick. Thanks for listening. I hope something that you heard today was very helpful. If you want to connect with us further, feel free to check us out on Facebook, Instagram, or our website, kenoychurch.org. Sure, I'm glad we're in this together.